What's up guys, Alan Brock here, coming to you from the boys nursery because it's really the best light we have in our house. So just ignore the crib and the airplane stickers back there. It's still a photography video. But I want to do something a bit different today. This is going to be a video reply in response to a video Ben Horne did about a week ago. His video was entitled On Being Courteous. And I'll put a link to that somewhere in here, assuming I learn how to do that in the next little bit. But his video was actually responding to a somewhat viral Petapixel article that was discussing photography etiquette. Now that article did have a few good points, things like, don't take rocks from the Death Valley racetrack playa. Don't walk on the playa when it's muddy and you'll leave footprints that can take years, if not decades, to repair. Those are all good points. I think everyone who has any just common decency about them will recognize that. But the article kind of strays a little bit, especially when it's talking about groups calling out single photographers or saying basically if you arrive early to a scene, you should share that scene with people that come later. You should give up the spot that you've earned, that you worked hard to earn. And I had a few stories that I wanted to share relating to that article, as well as Ben's video. They're both from Zion National Park, and the first story is actually the same day that Ben was shooting Archangel Falls. And that's because I was there that day at the same time. My buddies and I went with two other people to Zion. We woke up at 4 something that morning and drove to the subway trailhead, trying to be the first one there. If you've never been to Zion, they have a lottery system set up. Only 80 people per day can go to Subway. Now that may not seem like a lot, but the prime photo locations in Subway are all at the end of a 3 to 4 mile hike. Archangel Falls, the Crack, Subway itself. And these areas, the shooting locations, are actually very small. Even 3 to 4 photographers there would make it feel cramped. So I knew that it was important to try to be the first on the trail that day so we would have time to get our shots. So it's pitch black outside. We pull into the trailhead parking lot and my heart immediately just drops because the parking lot is not empty. There's already a car there. I kind of hoped that maybe it was a ranger, but I could see that it was somebody packing a hiking pack, probably a photographer. And so I was a little bit bummed out that we weren't going to be the first ones there. But then I thought about it a little bit and I said, okay, only one person can be this crazy to be out here when we are. And sure enough, it was Ben. He was loading his pack. I think he had some earbuds in, so I didn't say anything to him. We just grabbed our packs and we hit the trail. We're actually the first ones on the trail that morning. We kind of made our way through the flat part of the trail that you begin with and only got lost twice in the washes, which is easy to do because our headlamps were terrible. But we came to the part where you drop into the canyon, and it's here that Ben caught up to us. And we talked with him for a little bit, and then he took off. He was a little bit more familiar with the trail than we were. What really helped is he basically had the sun bolted to his forehead. His headlamp was extremely bright. Ours were way too narrow. But he was obviously a man on a mission. So he took off. We took a more leisurely pace. We couldn't really see when it was dark too well. So that slowed us down a little bit. But as daylight made its way into the canyon, we stopped to grab a bite to eat. And as we were stopped, one other photographer passed us. It turns out he was on assignment for Red Camera, which was pretty neat. And then right as we were packing up to get up from our breakfast, these 2 other photographers came. And right off the bat, I just kind of got a bad vibe from them. I don't know if it was their body language or their conversation, but something didn't feel exactly right. So we kind of looked around and said, okay, it's time to pick up the pace. Let's go. So we pretty quickly caught up to these 2 photographers, and sure enough, they were loading up trash bags. I'll get to that in a second. I knew exactly what they were doing, but my bad vibe was kind of confirmed at that point. So as we're hiking along, Mark and Tommy peel off to photograph another set of waterfalls, but I just wanted to do Archangel Falls that morning. So I continue to make the hike, and as I get there, sure enough, Ben is set up and making his shots. Here's the deal. He had absolutely earned the right to be there to take as much time as he needed. Now, I consider Ben to be a friend of mine, so I kind of knew that he would be courteous and I would get my shots anyway. But even if I didn't know the person, they had earned the right to be there. He had set his alarm just crazy early, even earlier than we did. He had put in the work to make that hike. Basically, he had sacrificed to get there. So he had every right to stay planted there as long as he did. Now, he took his shots, took a normal amount of time. We were talking as he was shooting. He moved his camera. I set mine up. I was still the only photographer there. No problem. But if he wanted to stay camped there all day, again, he had earned that right. Now, as I set up, I was taking my shots. A few of the other photographers were filtering in. And the two that we had seen that kind of gave me an uneasy feeling, one of them did this. That's right, he planted right in front of my camera as I was between film holders. And I thought maybe he would just, sneak in, grab a shot, and then stand back up. Well, no, he planted, composed, and started firing away and showed no signs of moving. Now, I'm not a very confrontational person. I'm one of those people that just shy away from it. Luckily, my buddy Tommy, he is not so much that way, so he made a comment and the guy moved, but it was really shocking to see that. I couldn't believe that someone would be that rude, really, to just set up right in front of me. We even told him it's a wide-angle lens, and he just kind of kept taking his shots for a little bit. So I'd never experienced something that rude before, that just completely lacking courtesy. Even though I was there before them, they stood right in front of my camera. Now, I'm all about working with people, but I think that planting right in front of someone's camera is a pretty big breach in etiquette. But anyway, he did eventually move, and so I got my remaining shots on, I think I shot Ectar second. But the rest of the photographers packed up their cameras, they moved on, and I was sitting there talking with Ben. I packed up my camera and headed on, and I told him I was going to go shoot Subway. That was the other shot I was going to get that day, and he said he would be there eventually after he did some video work. So I go on, I pass all the other photographers. They're setting up, getting some other shots like the crack. There's a few more waterfalls there. And so even though I left Archangel Falls last, I was actually the first person to Subway. And so I get there, it's late morning. I quickly find the prime spot. Now, if you've never been to Subway again, you hike in from the classic picture, you essentially hike in from the back of it, from the tube-like structure there. And there is essentially an elevated shooting platform. It's actually really small. The first time I saw it, I was surprised at how small the shooting space was. And for the composition I wanted, the prime location was dead center in that spot there. So I planted my camera there. Here's the thing, the glow doesn't show up really good until late afternoon. I knew that from the years past, or the year past I'd been there. So I wasn't going anywhere. I was set up, but the light wasn't what I needed it to be yet. So I had no intentions of moving. Well, eventually the other photographers filter in. Everybody manages to set up their cameras around mine. We work together well, getting cameras set up, but that group, the group of two, the guy that stood in front of my camera, I heard some comments kind of beneath his breath, but things like, I wonder if he's going to move anytime, because I really did have the best spot. And I'm still relatively new to landscape trips, landscape photography, so I was unsure of the etiquette of it all, and I was a little bit uncomfortable, honestly, staying camped out that long. but the light wasn't there. My shot wasn't even there yet. So by that time, Ben had arrived, and I was talking to him again and kind of asking what the etiquette was. And he said, "Don't sweat it. You were here first." And the more I think about it, yeah, I was there first. The shot that I wanted didn't even exist yet because the light wasn't there, so I wasn't going to move. But I had made sacrifices just like before, just like Ben had, sacrificed sleep for getting there early. He had sprinted to his location to get there first. I had got up early in the day, but I had sacrificed shooting all the shots I could have got before Subway because I knew I just wanted Subway. So thinking about it, I feel a little bit better. Now, once the light arrived, I took my shots. It still takes me a while to shoot. My exposure times were in 5 minutes, and I really wanted to get the shots. So I did bracket all over the place. So I ended up shooting for about 20 minutes and then pulled my camera back, packed up, and everybody else filtered in. And we all worked well together, except for the one guy with the comments. But this long, drawn-out story kind of brings me to my second point, or kind of the second thing I want to point out. If you're shooting in a very popular location, Zabriskie Point, Subway, the bridge at Zion, you've got to go in with a mindset that you're going to have to work with other people, because most locations, especially all the popular ones, there's so much information sharing now that everybody's going to know about it, and the odds are very slim that you're going to be on your own. So again, with the exception of those two guys, we all kind of, it's like we had this expectation to work together. And then once I moved, everybody kind of filtered in, and I think we all got the shots we wanted. I don't even know what point I'm on anymore. We'll call it point number 3. The article mentioned don't take things away from a scene. I'd like to add don't add things to a scene. The two guys, again, they were loading up trash bags, and what they were doing, and I knew what they were doing right off the bat, was they wanted to dump the trash bags in the pools at Subway, and that would give swirling, the leaves would swirl in a long exposure and create trails and a neat effect. So many things wrong with that. One, there are always going to be leaves in the pools at Subway anyway during the fall. You don't have to bring your own. 2, those leaves were never going to drain out of there. We had kind of talked him down from doing it at the beginning. We had, again, Tommy had kind of mentioned, I need to take him on every trip, by the way, just as kind of an enforcer. But he had kind of said, hey, can we get some shots before you do that? And luckily they didn't dump them in until after most people had got their shots. But those pools empty so slowly that the leaves, for at least that day, you are making an alterable change to a scene. Those leaves aren't going to drain out of there. So every other photographer that day, and probably the next few days coming after you, they're going to have to deal with those leaves. So don't take things away from a scene. Don't add to it either. Don't add something that's irreparable or not going to drain or blow away from the wind. All right, so that was my first Zion story. My second Zion story was in the Narrows. I'd scouted out a shot along the very end of the Wall Street corridor. It was a very dark bend in the river, some really dramatic light. Early morning shot. We hit the trail early. As I'm rounding the bend, I see another photographer set up. And I look, and sure enough, it's a large format guy, which normally I would be cool with, except that being a large format guy, I assumed that this guy had scouted out the light and was going to be there for a while. And again, my heart kind of sank. He was literally about maybe within 2 or 3 feet of where I had planned to plant my tripod. So I went up to him. He wasn't shooting yet, just kind of prepping, loading film holders, metering, things like that. And struck up a conversation. I told him I was a large format guy. Turned out he was the guy that I've stayed in contact with, really good photographer, really good guy named Justin. And I had mentioned that he was literally exactly where I wanted to shoot that morning, just kind of joking, not expecting him at all to move. I was just like, oh, bummer, you beat me to it. And he was very nice, very gracious about it. He was like, I've got no problem. Plant your tripod right beside mine. And I really thought about it, really did, but I didn't want to be that guy that sees a shot set up and comes and plants right beside it. So we talked for a bit. I thanked him and said, yeah, you know, I want to see what else I can get. I don't want to interrupt what you're doing. So I hiked a couple hundred yards past him and looked back and found a scene I hadn't discovered yet. Very dramatic lighting. It was really dark, but it had these cool looking fins on the left side of the wall, and the reflected light glow was actually creating shadows from the fins. Really, really neat, alternating light and dark. And I ended up setting up this shot and taking it, and it turns out it's one of my favorite images from Zion. I entitled it Through a Mirror Darkly for a couple reasons. One, it's just a cool verse in the Bible from 1 Corinthians, but it's literally the mirror image of what I had intended to shoot that day. I had gone from what I intended to shoot, hiked through it, turned around and shot it from the other side. So that's the mirror part. And it was also very dark. It was a 14-minute exposure. But I would have never even discovered that shot had someone not already been there and kind of forced me to think outside the box of what I wanted to create that day. And so you can use these opportunities. If someone is there first strike up a conversation with them. I think you'll find that most photographers are pretty cool people. You'll have a few outliers here and there, but most of us are pretty good guys, gals. It's just a good crew. They may say, hey, shoot here, or I'm going to shoot for 5 more minutes, then it's all yours. That's what Justin did that day, and he would have been fine with it. But I kind of was forced into that opportunity. I didn't want to shoot right beside him. I didn't want to interrupt what he had going. And so I used that creativity that was forced on me to create something that I didn't know was there and that I've really, really enjoyed. So that's kind of my Zion stories in response to Ben and the article. To wrap up, just be courteous out there. You know, there's a saying that sugar goes a lot further than vinegar. And what they mean by that is just talk to people. Don't just barge into a scene saying, I'm going to take this picture. If someone's there first, you know, use that opportunity to be creative. That's all I've got for now, guys. Hope you enjoyed this rambling video, and we'll see you guys next time.